All right, well, welcome everybody to our Capital Action Preview Night. It's great to have you all here. Yay! We have the Hanover and Chesterfield teams, and we are recording this so all the other teams can be well equipped for our General Assembly session in 2024. And I just want to say that, well, if we can go ahead and start our presentation, because I'm going to put up this nice graphic that our director of Speak Up Chesterfield put together for us to help promote this, and he actually chose the theme scripture for this evening, Ezekiel 22:30. And I personally think this is one of the saddest scriptures in the Bible, because it is God talking about how he looked for someone. I'll just quote the scripture verse. I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land so that I would not have to destroy it, but I found no one. And the vision of Speak Up is equipping people to be that team that builds up the wall in our culture that's being torn down, that stands in the gap when no one else is. And that's going to be very important this session, because as you know, just to give kind of a general overview of what happened, we wanted to pick up a seat in the Senate. We wanted to have pro-family conservative leadership in the Senate, because if you remember, a lot of our core pro-family, parental rights, pro-life bills really got stopped in a committee in the Senate. Now, we did pick up a seat in the Senate, but we didn't get enough to, have conservatives leading it. And then, of course, sadly, we lost some seats in the House. So now we have pretty much left-wing activists controlling leadership in the General Assembly. And so what does that mean for our strategy for this year? So what that means is we are not, I want to encourage you guys that this doesn't mean we're benched, that we're not out of the game, because we are dedicated. We are not giving up, never giving up the biblical mandate we have and the constitutional right we have to speak up on these issues. And so because we are not giving up on being a voice at the Capitol, we are going to be dedicated for a primarily defensive strategy. Last year we tried to get a lot of good things through, but this year the name of the game is stopping the bad stuff. And sometimes stopping the bad stuff can be more important in the long run than just getting good stuff through. And Todd's going to give a lot more detail on that. But another thing I want to point out is that the governor's veto is going to be key this year, because a lot of this stuff is going to get through both chambers, and then it will be up to the governor to veto. So that's going to be a key part of the strategy. And Todd will also talk about more that's going into that. I did want to point out that in addition to stopping the bad stuff, we will have some ways, we might have some surprising opportunities to get the ball down the field in some ways we don't expect. And so in addition to fighting the bad things, we're going to have some proactive things to work on, like coming alongside women that are pregnant and that kind of a thing. So Todd will not only share the bad that's happening, but also the good things we can rally around and have a powerful voice. So without further ado, I'm just going to let Todd start us off with the legislative overview. And if you would open us up in prayer too, we need prayer.
Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this night, and we thank you for all of the parents and grandparents and just concerned citizens from here in the local Richmond area who have taken time out of their busy schedule to come and hear about what's going to be happening in Richmond this legislative session, Lord. And we just ask for a special blessing over them for devoting their time to this and coming to listen to what we have to say. And we pray that the conversation will be fruitful, that we'll all be educated by what we hear, Lord. And Lord, that you will give us insights as well, ways that we can advance your kingdom in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that we can be bold in the name of Jesus Christ to advance your values and your principles within the halls of government, Lord. And we just pray that we can be vessels for you. So, Lord, we just lift this time up to you. May everything that we do and say bring glory to your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So when we started out preparing for the legislative session back in, September, October, we had a plan A and a plan B. And plan A was if we get both the Senate and the House, and we changed the composition in both chambers, what that Plan A would look like. And that list of legislative objectives was really long. We were really excited. And then Plan B was, okay, we keep the House doesn't, go anywhere, but we miss out on the Senate. And so the Plan B was, the list still was some of the same things, but a little bit shorter. And we didn't worry about Plan C because, we're the eternal optimists. And so we decided, we knew that if it was Plan C, then things would be drastically different. And so we are in Plan C. And so our legislative agenda really just shrunk. And so what we've tried to do is put together a number of proposals and initiatives that we thought reflected some of the core things that we wanted to continue to push that reflected our values: parental rights, religious liberty, the sanctity of life. Things that we are not going to give up and we're not going to stop advocating for. At the same time, we had to admit there were certain things that we were not going to be able to accomplish in our agenda. That, an example would be prohibiting transgender surgeries for minors. We were not going to be able to get that through. There wasn't even really a way that we could bring that bill forward. So there are ways to look at the Legislative General Assembly this year, and that is bills that we are messaging, so great messaging bills. There may be a few bills in there that we can get that we have bipartisan support on. And then there are some that are common sense that rallies everyone around, regardless of political affiliation. And something like that would be trying to stop human sex trafficking. Everyone can agree that's bad. And so we try to work with both sides to try and advance policies on that. With that said, we also have to be careful. We wanted to be mindful of what proposals we would have introduced and carried. Because you have to be careful this session, because the other side now has control of all the committees. They have control of the floor. They have control of everything. And so if you were to introduce a bill that you think is a good bill, and the other side does not like it, they could take that bill and turn it into whatever they want, because once it's in the committee, it's before the committee. And there is typically respect for a patron in their bill, but we don't know what to expect this year. And so we're very careful about what bills we bring forward, and we also be careful about what could happen on the floor of the General Assembly. Once a bill gets out of committee, changes that could happen on the floor when they're having a debate, and they can submit an amendment, and then you have no real public discussion. You might have discussion among the legislators, but you or I don't have any input in these bills once they start to be debated on the floor. So those are some things that may not even really be in our control, but we have to be mindful of. So just to refresh your memory, I about gave our staff a heart attack today on team meeting this morning when I mentioned the House was 52-48. It is not. It is 51-49. And then the Senate is 21-19. Those are razor thin margins. Typically in the House, in the past, the committees have been fairly balanced, proportional. The Senate hasn't always been that way. There could be some committees in the Senate that are grossly unproportional, and so, even chances of trying to pull away someone who you think is gettable in that committee, it just isn't going to make a difference. So those are some things that we have to be wary of when we go into the legislative session. But for the topics, for the issues, I kind of wanted to focus on what the hot button issues are right out of the gate. What are the main things that we're focused on? The main action items. And the first one is going to be an amendment to the state constitution. They're going to try and push this year. It's already been introduced. So just so you know, bills are being introduced. They started being introduced on November 20th. They're starting to catch up now. They're gaining speed, and the big dump will come next week and the week after that. And we go through all 2,500, 3,000 bills and make sure we are following the ones that impact family and address issues like the sanctity of life. Well, the abortion amendment was the very first bill that they introduced. And so This bill essentially establishes within the state constitution a fundamental right to an abortion. And it opens it up to, without any restrictions, without any limits, and it is very, it's bad. And so an amendment has to pass one General Assembly, then it has to have an intervening election, and then it has to pass the General Assembly again, the exact same language. So essentially, if it doesn't pass this year, they have next year. And then if it passes next year, then you have the House, which will come up for a full election, and then they have to pass again. So theoretically, if they go along and it moves through the process, it could potentially be approved in 2026. So our hope is to try and thwart it this year. And then if not, we come back next year, and then hopefully things change electorally and we see what the composition is in the General Assembly. The other big one is going to be marijuana commercialization. So if you've been watching the news, you know that January 1, the legalization component of that kicked in. So now you can have whatever you want in your house. You can have home grows. You can have up to an ounce or less on you in public. And then as you have more, then certain fines step in. But the component that they have not addressed is the commercialization part, the being able to sell it on every street corner. And so they've tried to do this for the past 2 years. Thankfully, the General Assembly and the House has stopped it. The governor has said that he does not want commercialization of marijuana in the state of Virginia. So these are going to be two of the big issues you're going to hear about in the news all year, all session long. Another one I think you're going to hear about as well is going to be physician-assisted suicide. Already they've introduced a bill to get rid of the common law crime of suicide. Now you might think, well, why, person's passed away, why would you go after them and try and charge them with suicide? Well, first of all, no one has ever been charged of suicide because they're dead. And so it's a terrible argument, but the reason why we have that is because we want to impose a stigmatism on the issue of suicide. It's bad. And so the way that you do it is you have these laws in place. It's just like with marijuana or any type of drugs. If you don't have those in place, then you open your society up for chaos. Well, that's going to open the door for bills that will try and push for physician-assisted suicide. And then, of course, the marriage amendment repeal. That was big for us. We were behind the initial amendment to put into the state constitution that marriage is between a biological man, you have to say that these days, and a biological woman, one man, one woman. And that was in 2012. And so now that they are coming back and trying to repeal that, and so we're going to do our best to try and stop that. That would have to go through the same sort of amendment process as the abortion amendment. So those are the kind of the really bad stuff that we know right out the gate is going to take a lot of our attention. On the good side, things that we're going to be trying to push that we think we might have, a couple of them we think we might have a good chance of getting passed. One would be public employee free speech. I should specify it's local employee free speech, specifically Tanner Cross. This is the Tanner Cross bill. And this would allow to make sure that a local school teacher, local employee can go to a government body, speak, favor against a policy and not face any type of disciplinary action. Sage's Law. Are we all familiar with Sage's Law in here by now? Hopefully. Sage, this is a very important bill because it does three things. It makes sure that parents have a right to know if their child is social transitioning at school. It makes sure that counselors cannot have discussions with their child regarding gender transition without the parents being notified. And the third is to make sure that parents are not criminalized for reaffirming a child's biological sex. It does those three important things. It's based off of a real life incident with a young girl who the school tried to hide her social transitioning from her parents. It led her down a path of getting into the wrong crowd, being sex trafficked. And but thankfully our Founding Freedoms Law Center stepped in, was able to help rescue her. She's doing better we hear. And so we have this bill, and she's very supportive of this and wants to make sure that no other young girls or young students can be thrown into this. On the life side, informed consent and then the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. These are two bills we've had come up the past 2 years. Informed consent just basically says that a woman who is going to consider having an abortion should be given basic information about what is going to be involved in the process and the procedure. And this was repealed in 2020 by legislation that pretty much struck just about maybe 50 years worth of pro-life advancements in the state of Virginia. The other bill to go along with it is the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. Delegate Nick Freitas carries this bill and makes sure that a child that survives an abortion is given reasonable medical attention. And what this does is it just contrasts both sides of the issue, that you're giving them information, but you're also, the most extreme situations, a child is going to be given medical attention. What you will not see this year is any bills to try and place guardrails, as we like to say, or restrict abortions. You won't see anything about heartbeat, life. You might see life at conception, but you're not going to see 15-week because they're dead on arrival. So, but these bills can still get a hearing, and they're important bills. They're good messaging bills and reasonable and common sense bills. Another one is adoption tax credits. This is going to be so when you adopt, you can earn a federal tax credit. But in many cases, adoption, if you're adopting outside of the foster care system, can be very expensive, especially if you adopt overseas, if you're adopting a newborn. And so even the federal tax credit only covers a fraction of what the total cost is. So we collaborate with the Virginia Catholic Conference to bring a bill to provide a $5,000 tax credit for families who adopt. It's based off of a West Virginia law that they have in place. And it really just, it shows the side of being compassionate towards these children who are just wanting a forever home. And you know, it's something personal to us because we've gone through the adoption process. And this is a great way to address also the growing issues within the foster care system. And so we have many, the latest number I think was right around 5,500 in the state of Virginia that are stuck in the foster care system. And so there's going to be an effort to improve that, and I'll mention that in a minute. Protecting female sports. Okay, we're fighting tooth and nail, and it seems like every month there is a tremendous example of why we should not be allowing biological males to compete against females. And the newest one is that the boxing, professional boxing, whatever, or MMA, I don't know, whatever it is, they're going to allow biological males now to compete against females. And I watched one interview after they have fought so hard to get their own league to be able to compete in that sport. Now you're going to let males come in and compete. We have some great examples. I know that that our grassroots team worked with the Salem, it was Roanoke swim team. Yeah. The Roanoke swim team, who was faced with a situation where a biological male was going to have to compete on that swim team. So we're going to be working hard to try and push that through. The other one is going to be TIBO legislation, so to make sure that homeschool families, that it at least gives their child an option to just try out for a public school, high school league team. And this is particularly important for those that are in Southwest Virginia. They don't have rec teams. So here in Richmond, your kids are in Hampton Roads area, they're playing travel ball, travel soccer, travel this. But in Southwest Virginia and some of the more rural areas, they don't have these rec teams like we do. And so being able to play on the high school team is really important for the homeschool family. So this bill has already been introduced, and so we'll see where that goes. And then one that we're working on is a bill to try and push back on the anti-Semitism and try and promote the state of Israel and religious liberty, and making sure that our Jewish community, our Jewish friends, have the ability to exercise their freedom of religion here in the Commonwealth of Virginia without any any antagonism, any threats, any violence. So we're trying to get a resolution through. It's just a resolution, but it would say emphatically that the House stands for the state of Israel, for our Jewish community, and for our Jewish friends to make sure that they're protected. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll just mention just a few more. So those were the hot button issues you'll definitely be hearing about. Some other ones that we've noticed that have already started to be introduced, or we're expecting will be introduced. The first one is frozen embryo commercialization. And so back in 2019, there was a bill, House Bill 1979, that amended the surrogacy laws in the state of Virginia. And it did so by changing the ways that the embryo could be created and then allowed to, amended the contract, but essentially took away any type of connection, father-mother connection to the embryo. So in other words, you may not be connected to that embryo whatsoever. And now, but they had some language in there that talked about and referred to these embryos as property. And we made a big issue about that because there is something very dangerous about referring to human embryos as property. And the bill ended up passing, and I believe the patron, who is the patron of this bill, referred to that as just clumsy language. And so now we have this year a bill that appears to be doing away with the prohibition against third parties or different actors selling the frozen embryos. So now we have essentially that clumsy language actually coming to fruition after we had really made a big issue about it, and there was a big discussion on the House floor. So we have a bill now that could really put us in a brave new world. And so we're going to be keeping an eye on that bill. I mentioned the adoption tax credit and the foster care improvements. Virginia, for a long time, was ranked at the bottom of the barrel when it came to the foster care system. And both sides have been working to try and get improvements on the foster care system. And it can be tricky. It is a very complicated issue, but there's going to be some bills that deal with kinship and trying to help facilitate children being able to go to relatives. And so we'll be taking a good look at those to make sure that it's not violating any of our family values, but to also make sure that we're helping improve the foster care system. Under parental consent, of course, SAGE's law I just talked about. You're also going to see, and the governor got a lot of pushback on this, surprisingly, there's going to be parental consent for social media. Some legislation was passed last year that dealt with pornography and having in place some parameters for parents. Now we're actually going to be trying to address the TikTok specifically to make sure that parents have to get consent for their minors to use TikTok. So if you turn 18, you're free to use that goofy website if you want, but if not, and I don't know if you've noticed, TikTok has been feeling the heat because they have all kinds of commercials out now that are trying to show the good that they do, and so anyhow, you're going to see legislation dealing with that. If we go to the next slide. That was a picture of Sage. That was just, that's a good reminder that I don't anticipate there being any direct efforts to try and maybe repeal our parental rights law. However, we're going to have to really look at the legislation when it's introduced to make sure that they're not in ways trying to undermine the fundamental right of parents to direct the health and the education and well-being of their children. They're going to probably figure out ways to try and slip that into legislation, and so it's going to take a lot of time to go through these bills to really catch that. So, and if we see something, we'll certainly notify everyone if we see something that could be detrimental to parental rights. So we can go to the next one. So, one issue we're trying and working really hard to get a bipartisan approach to find common ground, and that's in education freedom. What some refer to as school choice, but I like the term education freedom. And we want to give children as many opportunities to find the education that best meets their needs. One effort is going to be through education savings accounts. Okay, this bill came last year. We have the full backing of Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears. This bill it establishes a savings account for the family. It takes their per pupil amount, sets aside the money, and then they can use that to provide maybe tutoring, send them to a private school of their choice, maybe find a different school system altogether. But it gives them some flexibility. The other one is going to be this year. We don't have legislation to address the scholarship tax credit program. We're trying to actually not bring as much direct attention to it, but we want to make sure we protect it. The governor has in his introduced budget an increase in the cap of the program. Currently sits at $25 million. He's proposing a $30 million cap in his budget. So he sees the importance of this. This was a program I managed before joining the Family Foundation. It started out in 2013 with 40 children, a few $1,000s. Now we're looking at nearly 20 million and upwards in terms of the tax credit that's being used. That doesn't account for how much money and scholarships that's going into the program. So you donate to a scholarship program, you get a $65% tax credit. So 65 cents on the dollar. And we have over 5,000 students that are benefiting from this program. We would love to expand it, but right now we just want to do what we can to maintain it and keep it alive. One thing I will mention to you is that after these elections, the Senate will be the one who determines whether or not the sunset date gets extended for this program. The sunset is in December of 2027, so that means your current Senate is going to be the one who decides whether or not this program stays alive or not. So it's going to be really critical for us to help let them know how good this program is and the benefits of it. And the other one is a parental education tax credit that will be for all families, essentially a tax credit for families if you meet a certain income threshold. That if you are providing education services to your child, tutoring, things like that, then you get a tax credit that you can use to apply to the costs for providing those education. There are income thresholds for the ESAs and the Education Improvement Scholarship programs. Religious freedom, individual freedom. I talked a little bit about Tanner Cross, a public employee and then a local government employee provisions. And so the bill, the very first year, actually passed both chambers, made it to the governor's desk, but it ended up getting vetoed. Not because in principle the governor was against it, it was because of the provision dealing with the public employee. And there's actually something in the law that we've learned that actually provides protections for public employees. But the concern was that if someone was working for the governor, stands up and goes to a committee meeting, the General Assembly, them speaking against a bill that is actually a bill that the governor approves. And so there was that concern. So we took that out. That upset some legislators, so the bill ended up not going as far last year. We're staying with the Tanner Cross bill. However, we are going to look to see about adding some language to it because Peter Vlaming, I don't know if you all remember Peter Vlaming from West Point, a teacher who was a French teacher who was fired from his job for not using the proper pronouns. He actually had an agreement with the student and her parents to use the student's French name. And in one incident in class, he inadvertently used her pronoun, and that led to disciplinary action. Well, he challenged it and went all the way up to the Virginia State Supreme Court, and they ruled in his favor, and it was a really good ruling. And so our law center has been combing through it, and we're going to try and see if we can put some language in there to add to that. And so we have a patron for that bill. So we're working on that language to address not only the Tanner Cross situation, but also the Peter Vlaming. That might be pushing it, but we'll see where it goes. And then also on student and child safety, we have in here stopping marijuana commercialization. I've talked about that. Cell phone use. So Virginia Beach has a great cell phone policy, or a good policy. And there is a bill that's already been introduced that would require local school boards to develop a policy regarding cell phone use. And I know in Florida, they just recently passed a law saying that you can't have a cell phone during instructional time. You have to have it hidden, put in a bag, something like that. So this bill would actually require the school boards to come up with a policy, whatever policy it is, that meets the needs of your school system. And so we'll be watching on that, because that does have a parental rights component to it. I know my wife said, well, what happens if there's a tornado or an incident and I want to get in touch with my kids? Well, that's going to be an issue, and that'll be taken care of through the legislative process. And then also efforts to stop human sex trafficking. We have a couple of initiatives, but we'll be working with people on both sides of the aisle to see what we can pass. So what I will say, just kind of in conclusion, is that there's a lot on here that I didn't include. And what happens during the session is that we don't have a monopoly on all the great ideas. We're pretty sharp, and up to speed on what's going on within our communities and our families. But sometimes legislators will introduce bills and we're like, well, that is a great idea. Here's what we can do to tweak it, and we'll work with them and help them shepherd a bill through the process. And so we're starting to see some of those bills get introduced. A lot kind of hangs in the balance. I'm not going to create a rosy picture for you. This is going to be a very challenging session. We're going to see a lot of bills that are going to pass that are just really bad, and we're going to be relying on the governor and his veto pen to be filled up to be used. Our issues, though, typically are fairly easy for a like-minded governor to be able to veto. The issue is when you have something that passes in the House like 80-20, and whatever, 30-10 or something like that in the Senate. It makes it a little bit difficult to convince a governor to veto it. But when you have pro-life bills, or you have abortion bills, and you have a pro-life governor, those should be easy ones to veto. So we're going to be working with the governor. So a lot of our work will be on the back end, trying to encourage the governor to veto legislation, and encouraging the governor and letting the governor know, hey, we're mobilizing people to give you support for your veto. They're not mad when they email. They're mad at the patron and maybe the bad legislation, but they're not mad at you. They want to show support, and that's what we're going to do. And so I'll finish with this. My wife sent me a meme, and I thought it was very appropriate. It goes like this. I feel like I'm hanging on by a thread, but I know that thread is connected to the hem of his garment, and so we can have victory in him, and we can take solace in that, and know that regardless of what happens, we have victory, and so anyhow. But your voices are very much needed this year. So stay tuned, and we'll keep you up to speed as much as we can. So I'll hand it back over to King.
Well, I want to just pause for a moment. I feel like I should have given a better shout out to our Vice President of Government Relations. Is that your official title?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, better official introduction. Every General Assembly, Todd oversees a team of lobbyists, and he's down there at all hours, literally, during the session. So please do be praying for him. But it is a treat to have him give us a special update. So save your questions for everything that he just shared, and we'll be addressing that. But I get to talk about the fun part, and that is the Capital Action Days. And I just want to give you some perspective that there are, would you say, thousands of lobbyists, Todd, that are that go to the state capitol every year? Thousands, right? That's not an exaggeration. But very few, I really don't know of any besides the Family Foundation and you guys with the Speak Up teams that in a big way are speaking up for parents' life and religious freedom. And so that's why it's so important that we make sure it's not just the teachers' unions' voices, the marijuana, billion-dollar marijuana industry, gambling industry. That's who is down there. So we're trying to raise up the moms, dads, concerned citizens, biblically minded Virginians, and that's what we're doing with these capital action days, and also with what Todd is doing with his team. So that's what this is all about. So I just want to encourage you that way, that this is an opportunity to give people a voice. So I want to talk about the first action day that we're having January 24th. Here is the flyer that those that are here physically should have, and that we'll be providing to the teams later. So this is going to be our Kids Deserve More Day. And the whole idea is we've got thousands of kids right now that are forced to attend schools that aren't really meeting their needs. Maybe that's because maybe if they have special needs that aren't addressed, or if the school is not addressing their needs academically, or the school does not feel safe, whatever the reason is, kids are forced to remain in that because that's the zip code they are in, and their family may not have the financial means to choose a school that's going to better meet their needs. So, you know, the thing is, we saw what happened when during COVID, a lot, schools shut down, kids didn't have other options. I think that really points to the fact that we need more options to empower families. So there's really two, I would say, important reasons that this day is crucial. One is we know that schools are getting worse and worse in most cases, not all schools, but the large majority. We are not seeing parents respected in a big way when it comes to these issues like gender identity, abortion, explicit content, even gratuitous violence. We are not seeing enough respect for parents in that regard. We need other options. We need freedom to have other options. Then at the same time, while that's happening, while you've got these agendas, this propaganda, you've got just devastating loss from when they shut down over COVID academically. We've seen these tests showing devastating loss in reading and math, and they aren't picking it up. And what are the kids supposed to do? Just sit around and wait, you know, for adults to figure it out? No, they need options now. We need to stop failing our kids, and the way to do that is to empower parents to have education freedom to make choices. So that's what this day is about. It's called Kids Deserve More Day. And let me tell you how this is going to work. We are probably going to start early in the morning at 8 in the morning because we anticipate there may likely be an important Senate committee hearing. And this, I should mention, it is Wednesday, January 24th, so please mark your calendars now. And so it'll probably start off with, you'll want to get there around 7:30 to get parking and everything, and then at 8 o'clock, we'll go into the committee hearing. You'll have stickers. We aren't allowed to bring signs in, but you'll have Kids Deserve More stickers, so you'll have a visible representation there in the committee hearing, and we will represent there. There will be a press conference that day that you'll want to stand behind and support. You will be recognized in the Senate and the House floor, from the floor of the House and Senate. And then we will break up at some point into delegations to talk to senators, probably senators that we'll be talking to. And also, Todd and I will be doing a training and a prep right before you talk to your senators and representatives if you want as well. We'll do a training prep that day. Some of you have been to our Mama Bear Day. You kind of know how it works. It'll be very similar to that. But the first one is January 24th, Wednesday, January 24th, Kids Deserve More Day. Did you want to add anything onto that day at all from the side there? Or did I cover the basics pretty good?
I think you can emphasize it'll be in the brand new General Assembly building.
Yes, it's beautiful. The brand new General Assembly building is beautiful, much easier to get around. So this will be a fun way for you guys to see this brand new facility, and just for us to be able to show you around there. So next up, if we can go back real quick. I do want to encourage you to register for this event. We do have registration up right now because it's going to go quick. It's going to be January 24th before you know it. And we are looking to really motivate Christian educators, private school administrators, if you know pastors with a Christian school, but most importantly, parents and kids who are going to be impacted by whether they have more education freedom, or if, as Todd mentioned, Virginia's only school choice scholarship for kids, that could be jeopardized, especially, if they don't want to renew it, if they let the sunset come into play. So we need kids and families, their parents, that these kids could lose their scholarships. we need them there. And most of the time it's the private schools that have access to who those kids are. And so if you can help us get them there, that'd be great. If you'll save, we'll have questions at the very end, if that's okay. I'm going to keep going here. Let me go on to Mama Bear Day. So, this is one of my favorite days of the year. It's been so wonderful to see how this event has grown. I think this will be our 3rd annual Mama Bear, if I'm correct. And we need the Papa Bears too, but it's just fun to say Mama Bear Day. And the reason this is important is because we are expecting, we don't know exactly in what form yet, but we are expecting some serious threats, some serious efforts to undermine parental rights. I just want to mention, for example, the GUZ, some of you may remember Representative Guzman proposing that parents could have the CPS go after them if they weren't deemed to be sufficiently affirming of their child's gender identity transitioning. Am I describing that right? So, we could see things like that come up again, and we want to be prepared. We need to be there to ask them to respect parental rights, to maintain the strong protections that Governor Youngkin and team have put in place through his education department, the protections that Family Foundation has fought for over the years. We don't want to see those undermined. And so if you remember, we had a big Mama Bear press conference last year. It was very successful. Really need all of you guys standing behind the Mama and Papa Bear Day, behind them when we do that press conference. So it's going to be similar to the School Choice Day, where we're going to start out. If there is a key committee hearing, we will go to that committee hearing. If there is a really threatening bill in a committee, a Senate committee, it could get a lot of media attention. So we need a lot of you there with the Mama Bear stickers on. And then we'll have the press conference. We'll be recognized in the Senate and the House again. And we'll have the training where we go around and talk to key representatives and senators. So make sure you have that day on your calendar, Thursday, February 15th. It could be as early as 8 a.m., but if we're able to give y'all a break and not make you get there that early, then we will, but we don't know yet because we need to be a little bit further in the session for the time. But we'll let you know as soon as we have that information. So last but not least, I just want to cover the Virginia March for Life. I am really pumped about this year's event. It's going to be really key because what Todd mentioned, the amendment that they've already proposed to enshrine unlimited abortion in our state constitution. But the thing that I want you to be encouraged by is a lot of these other states where you see this happening and the bad news happening that this is getting through, they have a rushed through process. But our state, was influenced by the founding fathers. And so they have a system in our state where it's a 2-3 year process to change our constitution. So that works in our favor. Honestly, if this was something where this was going to go in the ballot the very next year, I think we'd be in a lot of trouble considering the climate that we all see that is happening right now. But because, we have this year to try to block it in the House and Senate, and then, the following year, the elections will matter a lot. So we have some time to educate people. So the March for Life is going to be a key part of that. This is not a year where we want to have weak visual demonstration. This is a year where we need to have more visual demonstration of support, that people still care about that unborn baby in the womb, that people don't want to see babies left to die after being delivered. This is the year we got to come out for that. So mark that on your calendar. And remember, this is a 3-month period really where we need to have action, and then we can all take a breath. Unless we have more school board battles. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah. Jason didn't like that. He banged the table. So, make sure, but we really need to be coming out for this. And in that vein, I'm excited because we are really incorporating the Speak Up teams more than ever before this year with the March for Life. And one way we're doing that is all of the Speak Up leaders are now incorporated on monthly phone calls with statewide planning. Becky and Jason, the others can tell you. And one thing we were going to do is each of the teams are going to have their own Speak for Life banner, and it's going to have Chesterfield, Hanover on it, Newport News. It's going to have all the 6 teams that we have. And we are challenging each team to try to get 100 people behind their banner. And we are going to space these teams out throughout the march. Now, if you imagine that you have these teams with these banners spaced throughout the march, that's going to go a long way to help the energy of the march, because as I've been joking, At the march, we have these young people start out with "We are the pro-life generation." It's all exciting. There's lots of music and chants and noise. And then as it gets further along down the line to us older folks, it gets all quiet. Unless you're Gloria.
That's
right. Gloria, yeah. So what we're doing is having Glorias spaced throughout the march. Yeah. And so you guys are going to carry the banner, and you're going to carry the enthusiasm and help the chants keep going, and make sure people have stickers and posters, and and promote locally. So that's what we're looking at. And so since we brought up Gloria, I have a little video.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Just to get us pumped up, that features several members of our Speak Up team. You will recognize Kathy Patterson, Gloria, and one person that's not physically here tonight, Pastor Ham. It's kind of fun because it was just spontaneous, but we were at the end of the march, and there were some young people kind of bookending the march, and they just started spontaneously singing them in.
Young people do. Jesus gave us life, and we're so glad about it. Oh yeah! Jesus gave us life, so glad about it. Oh, I'm so glad about it. See your face. See your face. We got to save the baby in the womb. We got to save the baby in the womb. We got to save the babies in.
So I want to also remind all of you that this has now become a full day of activity. So it's Pro-Life Day. And so just to kind of summarize what's happening, let's go on to the next slide. So at 7:30 in the morning at the Greater Richmond Convention Center, this is going to launch the advocate or speak part of the events. And so there will be people will congregate there, and they will be trained on how to speak to the representatives, and they will have delegations in the morning that will speak about not only opposing that constitutional amendment, but also ways to come alongside women. We didn't really get to emphasize a lot tonight, but Todd and team are going to be promoting legislation that comes alongside women that find themselves, in an unplanned pregnancy, ways to come alongside women, and we need to be really pushing that. So there are proactive things we can speak about in addition to the things we want to defeat. So that will happen in the morning, and then by 11 a.m. you're going to have the rally at the bell tower, and then at 12 we will all start marching around the Capitol. So if we can go to the next slide. I just want to talk about how now it's become a tradition for Governor Youngkin to come out and march with us. We're pretty sure that Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is going to speak. And so, and I know our Attorney General is going to be supporting this event also in various ways, Jason Miera, so it is going to be exciting. And so just want to kind of give you a little preview of what you're going to see at the rally, and then that we will have the support as we march around the Capitol. So we'll go back. And I'll tell you what you can do. So the most important thing you can do right now is, since we're talking about the march part of this, just go to marchforlife.org/Virginia. Make sure you're registered. It does help us to have you registered so we can communicate with you about what's happening, talking points, information, what you need to know about parking and that kind of a thing, social media, that kind of a thing. I think it was 11 or 12 member bus. Was it 12 seat bus that will count as a 12 seat van can count as a bus that will have access to the parking for that. If it's less than that, you'll just have to carpool and kind of figure out where to park. But if you have a 12 seat van and can fill people in there, and you make sure to register it.
Like a church van.
Yeah, like a church van. So then the second most important thing you can do after you register is try to get your church to get a van and fill that up from Speak Up people.
Try to get 10 churches.
Which, yeah, Sarah Villa and Becca have done a great job doing that, so they know all about that. And then thirdly, please post on social media. Now, when you register, there is an opportunity right away for you to just share that. But if you go to March for Life website, marchforlife.org/Virginia, you will see immediately a place to RSVP, which is register, and then you will see the FAQ, frequently asked questions section. And there will be an item there, one to register for the parking, and then also an item for promotional materials. So if you check in the FAQs for promotional materials, I think in the next day or two they're going to have new social media graphics and flyers and things like that. I'm almost there. Almost there for questions. I think that really concludes. Let's go on. Yeah, so we are at questions. So I think that concludes everything. And if I can just invite Todd to come back up here, and we're going to take some live questions. So if you have questions about the legislation and also the capital action days, and I'll start with you since you've been very patient. Thank you.
Okay, I've got some on both, but
Okay.
starting with you and the events, just one thing about the Pro-Life Day. This is a good flyer, a post, put around. However, it needs to have on the bottom the register, as you said, what, March for Life /VA?
Well, there's different places to go. So actually, that the web link that is there also, you can register for the March for Life there.
I'll just suggest that.
Yeah, so
maybe
either one will
say
work.
Register, highlight the register.
Okay, yes, thank you, yes.
The
But
other-
anytime there's a web link, either for the Pro-Life Day or the March itself, that gives you a way to register for everything.
Regarding the 24th, the Kids Deserve More,
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering whether or not the Middle Resolution Coalition is going to join in with you on this, because that will certainly multiply, it's a force multiplier to get their efforts involved as well.
Yeah, and I forgot we should be probably restating these questions in case it's hard to hear for some people, but he's asking about other groups partnering. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so Craig, the Sess at the Middle Resolution, I actually had a conversation with him today, letting him know about it. He's seen the emails. We're part of the Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance, so they will be part, there to provide support. But know that this is a Family Foundation sponsored event, so we've been doing it for years
I
now.
just want to see if we can get them to
Yeah.
support it, come in, add to it,
Yeah, but we've let him know, and we want to, because they bring a value to it as well, because then they go to their groups and are able to share it as well.
The last item here is on the Mama Bear, parental rights on the 15th. Is this a short session or a long session this year?
This is long.
Long.
Question is
year.
whether it was
Oh,
short
sorry.
or long session. Todd's saying it's a long one, right?
So the date, I thought
It could be a really long
it was
one.
late in the session, but I guess at this point it would still fit in terms of advocacy.
Yes, question about why Mama Bear Day is a little bit later this year, and because we are thinking that we are going to know where any bad legislation is at that will be undermining parental rights around that time. And also, it's after Crossover Day. Crossover Day is a little bit later this. You want to explain why Crossover Day is important?
Well, I mean, no, I think you're right, though. I mean, any bills, like Sages of Law, I would love to say that they get through a chamber, but we know where they're going to end up. We know what the outcome is going to be. I think Candy's right. We'll know what the bad legislation is, and then that will be able to motivate the mama bears and the papa bears to be able to come and speak. It gives us something to be able to address. I think there's also, we've got a number of these different days, and other groups have their lobby days as well, so we're just trying to find good weekends for it to work in. But the crossover, though, with it being, I think it's on the 15th or the 14th, that day is critical because a little bit flexible. We know what bills are going to be going to the different chambers, and we'll have more opportunities to have conversation with legislators because they're not hearing the bills just yet.
So the bills will have just gone over to the Senate.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think one of the most important things we'll do this year is speak up against bad things and having parents empowered to do that. So I mean, we've got to be the stand in the gap people for that. So it's going to be important. Other questions? Don't be shy. Yes, Marianne.
Committee meetings.
Okay.
We'll do Marianne, then we'll go to Nancy.
You had mentioned committee meetings. Can the general public sit in on committee meetings?
Yes.
So that the question is, can the general public sit in on committee meetings?
Yes. This is your government. You can go and sit, and you can get up and speak if you so desire. You don't have to be a lobbyist. You can get up and speak. So, it's in a brand new building, and your tax dollars went to help pay for that. So, you have all the more reason to go and sit and watch or participate.
And we will bring you to important committee meetings,
Yeah.
like on the Kids Deserve More Day and the Mama Bear Day. Nancy, you had a question?
Yes, and yes, Todd, could you just clarify? I think that are some criteria for which bills the governor can veto and which he can't.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what gets picked up on the camera, so I'm just going to go ahead and
Go ahead.
restate that question. So the question is, what bills is the governor able to veto and which ones is he not able to weigh in on?
Yeah, that's a good question. When it comes to a constitutional amendment, the governor has no authority over that. So any bills that would amend the state constitution, any resolutions, he's not going to be able to veto them. That's why stopping it in the legislature is so critical. So, but any other bills, he still has the ability to veto. When it comes to the budget, it's a little bit different. There are certain ways that he can, when the budget gets to him, he can make changes to it. Some of it can be veto, some of it can be some type of line item to the wording. But budget is a different animal with its own sets of rules in terms of how the governor can take action on it. But great question. Yeah. So constitutional amendments, governor cannot veto. It's strictly in the legislature. Any other of the bills, though, that come before his desk, he can veto.
Okay, so hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here, but Todd, so it could come down to one vote, this constitutional amendment on abortion this year.
That's right. And I don't want to, in this audience, reveal our strategy.
Because it is on video.
It is on video.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. They could come down to one vote or one person. So I'll leave it at that.
So it's important for you guys to come out.
So just so you know, hope is not lost. I mean,
Right.
there's a chance, a real fighting chance.
Any other questions?
We're here.
Yes.
I was going to actually ask you about that. Generically speaking, is there any hope for one or two delegates, one or two senators on the other side potentially being movable by grassroots action? Or are they all in lockstep? It seems
On
like
which
maybe it's-
issue? On multiple issues or on the abortion issue?
Well, on a variety of issues.
Okay, so the
I don't want to go issue by issue, but I'm
Yeah.
saying just, is there some hope that not everyone is in lockstep on the other
Can you-
side, just generically?
would you restate that question? I think you'd be best.
Yeah,
restate.
so the question is there any thought about there being ways to influence a legislator, a Democrat legislator or a Republican legislator, just to be fair, and sway them to vote against their party?
Well, the question
Is there
really,
hope?
Are there any that
Are there any?
Are there any that potentially could be swayed? So identify
Okay.
them now, but just in theory.
Yeah. So my job is to go in and try and influence as many legislators as I can. And I sure hope that there. So let me take the issue of abortion. Abortion, in terms of laws and everything, is going to, it's going to be somewhere. And if we truly want to stop it, we need to change the hearts and minds of people. And I can go in there and share all I want on the legal and policy side of it, but at the end of the day, we got to change hearts and minds on that issue. Now, we will do our best to get to as many legislators as we can on both sides of the aisle. There are a lot of, that's another thing. There are, I think 40 new, I might have to rely on Jesse on this one.
Somewhere, I think there's around 40 new between both the House and the
Yeah.
Senate.
So
You
we're
probably have to restate that.
So there's about 40 new between the House and the Senate of legislators this year. So there's like a 40% change. You're looking at 500 years of institutional knowledge that is gone, combined institutional knowledge of all of these legislators that have been around. I mean, Senator Sasslaw, who's a Democrat from Fairfax, has been there for years, a long time, since he was like in his 20s. I throw that out there. I'm not sure that's accurate or not. But we lose a lot of institutional knowledge. We have a lot of fresh faces. It means a lot of great relationships that we can build. And we all understand the political reality too, that there are some that ran on certain issues and they're not going to budge. And legislatively and culturally, things are right down the middle. It's not the days of the Tip O'Neills and here in Virginia there were actually some pro-life Democrats, and it's maybe they're there. We'll see if we can find them.
One left.
Yeah,
One. We need one.
that's one.
These things like the resolution against anti-Semitic policies or efforts to squelch religious freedom. Hopefully there's opportunity there. So on parental rights, would you say that a lot of this depends on people's ability to bring pressure from their community
Yeah.
for efforts to undermine? They're going to need to hear from their community, just like we saw at the school board level.
Yeah, never underestimate the power of the grassroots and the power of the people. And I want to clarify, I don't think that they would necessarily come directly after the parental rights statute. But I do think that there are going to be ways they try and undermine parental rights. And we have to be very careful and very critical of every bill. The pressure is going to come on those who are waffling. Those that are in lockstep on one side or the other, they're not going to be phased. That's the lobbying that has to be done in the off season, going to their offices. But you're right. I mean, it can impact those who are, and there might just be one or two this year. But all we got to do is get one or two of them, and so that's what we'll do.
I think we're going to have to. Is there one more question? If someone can give me a good wrap-up question, maybe we can end with that.
So what's the most important thing that we can take back to our neighbors from this meeting?
Excellent question. So Sarah is asking, what is the most important thing that people can take back to their neighbors from this meeting? And I would say, number one, make sure they're signed up for the alerts coming into this General Assembly session that is going to start January 10th, right? January 10th.
That's right. Yeah.
So that is familyfoundation.org/alerts. And then, do you remember by memory the text to watch line? Put you on the spot here.
No.
Who has that flyer? Let me grab it. Thank you. Yes, so text TFF to 77222. Text TFF, the Family Foundation, TFF to 77222. And what that does is let you get texts when there is an urgent bill that is going to be in a committee hearing. You can just get on your text and watch it happen. Or if we need to let you know to contact key members of the committee right away, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Well, I guess the only other thing I would add from a grassroots perspective, most important takeaway, is please make sure you have these dates marked on your calendar and register for the ones you can attend. So just to recap, January 24th, Kids Deserve More Day for Education Freedom. February 15th, Wednesday, February 15th is Mama Bear Day. And then you have the Virginia March for Life, February 21st. Do you want to give it any takeaways as we wrap up here?
Well, I would just say you're going to see, some legislation, some things happen. Probably they're going to concern you, but just know that there's still hope, and we're going to be fighting these issues till the very last day of session. And if anything, just stand up for life, stand up for families, and be bold in how you communicate on these, and don't be afraid to contact your legislators this session.
Yes, we will never, never give up, and we are stronger when we speak together.